And a young man, a boy who's played Little League and has a mitt and a ball, is familiar with just playing catch, calling out his friends or his brothers and going out in the front yard of the street and just playing catch back and forth. But they also know that sometimes we miss the ball, or I remember the ball going over my head or getting by me and rolling up to someone's house and rolling into their bushes. And when the ball rolls into someone's bushes, their thicket, that means you got to go in there and get it. And so what is these things, these thickets? They're oftentimes next to people's houses, a dense group of trees, something you get tangled up in. And when the ball is in there, your friend's usually saying, go get it. You got to go get it. And that means you have to kind of trudge in through the bushes, trudge in through the thicket. And I found out just a couple days ago, I remember some people had these thorny thickets out in front of their house, and they do that on purpose. And it was just kind of as a defense of their home. But you know, when you go in there, you're going to get scratched up. When you grab the ball and you finally find it back in there, then you got to go out. It's kind of a rite of passage. You will get scratched up, but you have to go get the ball. First, you got to enter the thicket. And I appreciate this image of entering the thicket. It's one that St. John of the Cross uses in his book, Dark Night of the Soul. He writes, "Would that men come at last to see that it is quite impossible to reach the thicket of the riches and wisdom of God, except by first entering the thicket of much suffering in such a way that the soul finds there is consolation and desire." It is very much the sort of path we're on now. And we know that all the patriarchs and saints, what made them famous and even more holy was they entered into some kind of challenging thicket, some kind of challenging arena. Moses shows himself by leading the Israelites into the promised land, into the desert first, because it shows that the agony must come before the ecstasy, and there is no ecstasy without agony. There is no Easter Sunday without Good Friday. And the more profound and powerful and maybe even painful Good Friday is, that much more glorious is and the ecstasy of Easter Sunday. King David became famous and powerful because he stepped in the ring with Goliath. Elijah, the great prophet, he was the last of the prophets. He was called by God, but his fame exploded because he took on 430 priests of Baal by himself, stepped in the ring with them, said, let's do this. And even after he won that battle, his thicket was not finished. Even on his journey, he was chased and had to endure sufferings. So welcome to our Lord Jesus Christ. As we approach Holy Week, we know that Jesus entered into the thicket of this world. And he does it every time at the Eucharist. He comes to us. But as he approaches his passion, he does get all cut up in the thorns and thicket of all of that. He knows he has to go through that agony that we go through on Good Friday, every Friday when we do the Stations of Cross, even next week, Palm Sunday, we experience that agony with him to better set us up to experience the ecstasy that is the resurrection, his resurrection and ours. But as a priest, I'm realizing, we all as clergy are realizing, to be a minister really does mean enter into the thicket of people's lives. We have people here in our church that need annulments. And we have people that minister to them. And when someone needs a past marriage annulled, you really are entering the thicket with them. And it's thorny and painful. And oftentimes they'll ask, why do we have to go back there? Well, things have to be healed. But they don't go in there alone. We have to go into the thicket with them. And like I said, sometimes it is extremely thorny and painful. Even regular marriage prep, each couple is its own situation that we have to meet, enter the thicket of their lives. And not just two 21-year-olds are engaged, living with their parents. Rarely it's like that. Most of the time there's issues. Oftentimes, sometimes they already have children. Sometimes they need annulments. Sometimes multiple annulments. But we're asked to enter their situation, to enter the thicket of their thorny situation. And it's not always a hard and fast rule how to do it. Sometimes just going in there and listening and helping them discern. You know, I bring this up a lot, but for me it is always enlightening. Why I appreciate those in the deliverance ministry, especially exorcists. When someone is being harassed or even full-blown possession, that priest has to get himself prepared because it's going to be a fight and he needs help. And he enters into the situation with the demoniac because souls are in the balance. You're not reaching in for baseballs anymore, you're reaching in for souls. And it's easy just to ignore it because sometimes I remember going into the bushes to fetch a baseball and there were other baseballs in there. Why? Because someone said, the heck with that thing. I'm not going in there. And that's easy to say. Easy to say. There was a woman many years ago who was Catholic that I knew, but she became Mormon because she married a Mormon. It happens. But then a few years later, she wanted to come back to the faith, and she approached us. How do I come back to the church? That's complicated because her husband was a bishop in the Mormon church, which made it complicated. And what made it more complicated was that he had cancer. So she wanted to help him. She loved him, but she wanted out of his church, and that's not easy. And so we entered that thicket with them. And sometimes it just meant listening because there was no easy way to solve these problems. It was very thorny. And I appreciate there's people out there on ministry right now. Those of you who are involved in RCIA know this. Every single person has their own journey to make. But there are people out there, I would say, in the thicket of the world, the culture of death. There's a man, you can look him up on the internet. He goes by Billboard Chris. Billboard Chris is just a dad, and he wears these billboards, and he goes to art festivals, college campuses, just on the street, and he wears a billboard on his chest, and it simply says, minors cannot consent to puberty blockers. Fairly innocuous. And he asks people, what do you think about this? And man, the thorns come out. And all he's looking for is conversations, conversions. But it is thorny. There's another man I watch, another group. I'm not even sure that his name is Jeff, but he runs a coalition called Abolitionist Rising. Again, you can look it up, Abolitionist Rising. And it's just a group of people who go to college campuses, mostly in Oklahoma right now, and call for the abolition of abortion. And they bring their little signs. And it is not easy. It is prickly. They're kind, they're gentle. They want to enter into conversation, but they're entering right into the culture of death. And the culture of death pushes back. Like I said, any exorcist knows that that demon is going to fight back. He does not go down without a fight. And there will be some scratches and thorns in the process. Not this week, but next week will be Holy Week. And what makes it holy is that it's a bit uncomfortable. We're having confessions, and we'll go through those announcements later. But even as we approach Good Friday, Good Friday is supposed to be uncomfortable. And in this particular community, we don't really do Stations of the Cross on that day. We actually have a walk from Our Lady of Guadalupe to St. Mary's to here. And we do the Stations of the Cross, and it takes about 2 hours. And it's very profound, it's very moving, but it's not always comfortable. Now, last year we did it. We tried to, but we got kind of rained out. But I remember 2 years ago, it was Good Friday. We started the walk, and everybody was fasting. Usually on Good Friday, we fast. We asked that you fast. A lot of us hadn't eaten at all. And I remember walking down one of the streets, and there was some guy outside flipping hamburgers on the barbecue. Oh, man, I was like, I wish I was Baptist right now. But it calls us to service and remind us each step. Today is Good Friday. Today is Good Friday, and we will prepare and be ready to celebrate that ecstasy, even though right now it's kind of an agony. But it reminds us also that the world is a sticky thicket. And as I read to you, that Mr. Webster defines a thicket as a dense group of trees and bushes that you can get tangled up in. And getting tangled up in is not comfortable. But we remind ourselves that these are not baseballs, these are souls, and souls are in the balance. And Jesus tells us today, whoever serves me must follow me. Pick up your cross and follow me. Follow him where? Follow him where? His apostles found out real quick as they entered into the world, took off into the thorny place that was their world, not to fish out baseballs, but to go and get scratched up, get tangled up in the thorny world, to go into the thicket and to bring out those souls that are begging to be rescued. And so on Easter morning, you will all make your baptismal prayers again, promises again, and we will give you a sprinkle to remind you that you have been saved. Somebody went after you and pulled you out of the thicket. And we're asked to do the same thing too. Jesus says, whoever serves me must follow me. So we follow him into the thicket, however thorny it may be.